is quite right at 12 o'clock. So I think I will go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for being here. I'm going to unshare for just 1 second. Those little faces out there. I like when I see pictures. So I'm Jen Ham. I am the Associate Dean for Resident Education and Work Environment. And I'm also the Program Director for the OBGYN residency. And that's been a role I've had for about 10 and a half, almost 11 years. So I have gone through my fair share of ACGME surveys. Really, this is going to be just some highlights about the survey process, and hopefully we can have a good kind of interactive discussion about any concerns or common issues that you might have. So we'll go through, and this is geared to and some of you have been at this longer than I have. I see names up there of folks who taught me how to do this process. So please jump right in if that is the case. And I misspeak. Okay. So like I said, the objectives for today are pretty simple. We're going to go through the basics of the survey, the why, who, when, and what, some pre-survey strategies that have been shown to be pretty beneficial in the past, and then discuss some common issues that can come up during the survey process, or things that you'll get your survey back and you go, what do you mean they said we don't have a fatigue policy? So we're going to go through some of those things. So why is the ACGME survey important? Well, really, the survey has questions about the clinical and educational experiences within the program, and it's one of the main ways that the review committee has of measuring a program's compliance with common program requirements and overall the learning environment as a whole, at both the faculty, fellow, and resident level. So it also provides feedback to the programs and to our institutions regarding our overall performance, and we can look at trends across all the different competencies, both within our compared to our own specialty, from ourselves to across the nation, and then across the institution to look for any concerning trends that we might start to notice, or places where we're falling off of the norm. So who's the ACGME survey really for? Well, obviously residents and fellows and faculty are the ones who complete the survey, but the beneficiaries are not only them, but also the programs like we just talked about, the institution, and then of course the ACGME can look for those national trends and data to look to see if there's anything that's happening across programs across the country, and maybe the need for interventions on the national level. So when do we take the survey? When is this window? Usually the window is somewhere between January and April. Last year it was a common 6-week window between February and early April. Our exact dates for this year are still pending. When we get them, you'll get that email to the program managers and program coordinators. And then it is our responsibility from that email to go into the ACGME site and actually send those requests to complete the survey to our resident/fellows and faculty members. So the ACGME does not do that for us. That is one of our jobs. Once they release that date and they send you that email that says, hey, it's time for your program to complete your surveys, you go in, you send them out to your learners. They do have pre-made emails, but this way you can also track who's completed it, who needs the reminder emails during the window, so that you can get to what is the ACGME minimum requirement of 70% compliance. But obviously the U of L goal is 100% compliance. Also, institutionally, we'll have the due date for the survey will be about a week before the actual national survey deadline to make sure that we do reach that 100% compliance rate. And then we are usually getting our results back in early May. If you are a program that has less than 4 residents or fellows, you will only get a multi-year kind of batch data to preserve the anonymity of the fellows or residents who are completing your survey. What is on it? It covers a lot. It looks at clinical experience and education, the faculty teaching and supervision, evaluation, educational content, resources, patient safety, diversity, inclusion, professionalism, looks at the overall program itself, and then at wellness as a separate secondary component of the survey. I put this link down at the bottom for anybody who hasn't taken a look at it. It actually will, on the ACGME site, it links to all the common program requirements and where these specific things come from and what they're looking for. So it's a medium read. I think it's about 3 or 4 pages of PDF, but it will show you how they've matched these particular things up to the common program requirements. When we look at each one of those sections individually, as far as what's on it, it looks at, when we're looking at the clinical experience and education, they're really focusing down on the work hours. Are they working more than 80 hours a week? Do they have 4 or more days free in that 28-day period? How often are they taking in-hospital call? Is it less than every third night? Do they have 14 hours after they're 24? Do they have, they're working more than 24 plus 4? Can they get their work done in the 80 hours? Do they have more responsibilities that can cause them to continue to work after that 24 hours? Looks at faculty teaching and supervision. Are people interested in teaching? Are they happy with the amount of teaching they're getting in all the different clinical sites? Do they have the appropriate level of supervision? Are they able to, advance their skills and with increasing responsibilities? When they look at evaluations across, can they see their evaluations? Are they able to evaluate the program? Are they able to evaluate faculty? Do they feel that that it's anonymous, there's no fear of retribution, that they are satisfied with the amount of and type of feedback that they get from their faculty members? And educational content, are they learning? Is there a environment of scientific inquiry? Meaning, do the faculty stimulate them to think? Do they have an opportunity to be part of research? Do they learn about health disparities, their own personal performance dashboard, assessing patient goals, looking at culturally competent care? Do they have instruction on maintaining their own physical and emotional well-being? This is a big one. Do they know when to seek care? Do they get instruction on when to seek care for fatigue and sleep deprivation, for depression, for substance abuse, for burnout? Do they know how to minimize the effects of sleep deprivation? Are we talking to them about strategic napping, about the use of caffeine, about what resources do we have available to them? Looking at diversity and inclusion, so looks at are they being prepared to interact with diverse patient populations? Do we foster a culture of inclusivity and belonging? Do they have an opportunity to participate in recruitment and retention, not just of resident and fellow, but also of medical students, of staff, of new faculty? Those were all kind of asked on the previous year's survey. Looking at the resources, education, is it compromised by non-physician obligations? Are there too many other learners that are there that are taking away from their educational structure? Do they have enough time to interact with their patients? Is there a balance between service and education? Can they get to didactics on time? Can they get to their appointments if they need it? Are they satisfied with the safety and health conditions of the environment? Do they have call rooms? Do they have, relaxation space, those kinds of things? Do they talk and learn about cost awareness and cost conscious care? With patient safety and teamwork, is this a place that emphasizes patient safety? Do they know how to report a PSN or a patient safety event? Do they work with interprofessional teams? Have they worked on or participated in adverse event analysis? Do they know, is there a process to transition care when fatigued? When they look at the professionalism, look at the faculty, and if they act professionally when they're teaching, if they act professionally when they're providing care, are they comfortable talking to their supervisors for questions? Can they, again, raise concerns without fear or retribution? That they're happy with the process, they're satisfied with how the process they have for solving problems or concerns. If they've seen or witnessed abuse, whether or mistreatment, and then a process in place for confidential reporting of unprofessional behavior. And then the overall program evaluation, would they recommend this program? Would they go to this program again? The overall quality. So that's a lot of information, and it's a lot of information even for people like us who work in all of the ins and outs and the specific wording and language of the ACGME on a daily basis. And so sometimes it's beneficial, and I would say sometimes meaning always beneficial, to really sit down with your faculty and residents, maybe at a didactic session, maybe in if you have to in an email, and just kind of review some of the things. And a lot of this you already have because you did it from last year's survey results and citations during your annual program evaluation in May or April or May, whenever you had that. So you really just kind of need to update it and just remind people of, oh yeah. Yep, this is what we got. And, you know, looking at that trend, was there a downward trend? If there was a downward trend, like why was that when you addressed those questions? What was it that was going on? And then what changes have you made to address them so that you can remind the residents, especially the new interns who weren't here, they don't have that history, to be able to give them some framework for trying to fill this out. So review your past year's response and citations, review your information and updates from your APE. If you're like my program and you have this recurrent violation for 80-hour work weeks, but it doesn't make any sense because you look in MedHub and they have like 5 violations for the year, consider preparing, consider looking through and going through each of the actual work hour requirements, that it is 80 hours a week averaged over 4 weeks. So you may have a week that shows up in red on MedHub, but if you average that over the next week when you worked 40 hours or 50 hours, that's still less than 80 hours for that whole time frame. Or when just kind of going through that 1 in 7 days off, so they know what those requirements are. And then consider preparing a MedHub report with your violations for the year to date, and actually looking at those numbers with them, and showing the total number that the program has. Sometimes I've seen programs actually go as far as doing that on a resident level and sending them out to the residents individually. But this is helpful for people to know what's being reported and what we're actually seeing versus just anecdotally. Also, discuss the difference between rarely versus sometimes to the ACGME. And obviously you want your residents and fellows and faculty to answer the survey honestly and completely, but I always kind of, we routinely will be like, well, sometimes I have to stay late for, to finish up a case or to finish up my notes. And so trying to help them to quantify that, and that, if you look back, is that in the past 6 months, has that been like 5 times? So, because 5 in 180, that's kind of rare, versus if you were doing it, 10% of the time, so maybe 18 times, that might be more like sometimes. And so they might be thinking of a handful of times, which really is rare, but to them, they might answer sometimes, or vice versa. So kind of just reviewing what that means and the level of compliance then that slightly different answer can have on your survey results. And then looking at those common topics that can be an issue. And this is where we're going to get into the next part, reminding people of all the different wellness, health, and fatigue mitigation services we have, of the educational sessions that your program does, the ways that you can make anonymous concerns to, through your program, if you can't go through your program, through the ombudsman, like the different avenues that the residents have, looking at patient safety and quality improvement initiatives and ways that they may not necessarily think that they're participating, but then you go, oh yeah, they're participating. Sometimes residents don't think about the fact when they're going through and doing M&M or going through and doing clinic improvement projects, that's on quality improvement or on overall patient safety. Looking at DEI opportunities within your department and the campus, looking for those outreach opportunities that you do, the ways that you help out, and those things also that are available around the university. So when we think about common issues, and I'm going back to here again, I just talked about going through those work hours with them, and MedHub is not our friend, right? In the sense of it will put that big bright red dot on, for the week, then when it's 80 hours. But if you average it out over those 4 weeks, that's not a true violation, but they see those reds and they're like, yes, I work, more than 80 hours all the time. The other is when you're thinking about the evaluation process. And it sounds kind of silly, but remind them, you can see your evaluations in MedHub. At the end of each rotation, you evaluate your faculty members. You have the ability to evaluate the program every year. Every one of our programs here on campus has an internal program evaluation every year. Sometimes they forget that. Looking at, reminding them about the exercises that they might have on healthcare disparities, looking at when we talk about cost conscious care, for that you have the ways that you work with social work, or that you refer to WIC, or you talk about the labs and the need for the labs for those patients who have no insurance, or that you look at, using GoodRx versus, insurance coverage, or how you talk about the ways that you can bundle certain services for patients. So there's a lot of different ways that sometimes your day-to-day you're working on, people don't always put together. Similarly, with instructions about, physical and emotional well-being, and those things, those instructions about fatigue. And, if you have a wellness curriculum, going through the components of the wellness curriculum, sometimes even having a specific session, whether it's during orientation, which we have it in orientation, but reminding them, remember in orientation when we talked about all of these different ways, and when it's time to get care, or when it's time to seek help, and these are all the different avenues that you have to get help. Remember about employee assistance. Remember that if you just have to let us know when you have an appointment, we get you out to where you need to go. Like, just sometimes it's just about reminding them about what we actually have available. When we talk about safety and health conditions, reminding them about the escort service and the new escort service, and reminding them about the Uber services for when they're tired, for them to be able to drive, to get a ride home and back to work, those kinds of things. Patient safety and teamwork, reporting patient safety events. Sometimes people go, I don't remember how to do that. And you go, you remember when you put a PSN in on the computer? It's right here. Remember this icon? Oh yeah, that icon. Yeah, I know. I remember now. Or that we have residents who are working on the quality and safety committee for the House Staff Council, or that you're working on your group QI project, or those kinds of things. Show them the fatigue policy, remind them of it. That, remember, it's in our handbook. We talked about this. When you're tired, this is what we need to do. Because again, they'll forget about it. With the professionalism, again, the biggest one that comes out a lot of times is the process in place for confidential reporting of unprofessional behavior, reminding them of the different avenues that your specific department has, remind them that the different people they can go to there, but then also remind them about the ombuds and their ability to go there, and how that can be done confidentially as well, separate from the GME directly, or from the ACGME. Like, these are all things that we have in place locally. All right. This is the part where I'm going to stop sharing, because I want to hear from you guys about best practices that you have with your program, or problems that you have that you might want to use the hive mind to improve upon, or to figure a better way for doing stuff. So there's a lot of you on here. Everybody's perfect. You know it all. I'm going to start calling on people that I know have expert advice, whether that. So if you know me and I've worked with you, you know that I'm going to call on you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. We generally, our administrative chief resident does hers first, and she puts together a PowerPoint kind of explaining to the residents what the questions mean and reminding them of things that we've done throughout the year to kind of fulfill those kind of questions. And it's just her and the residents that do this talk. There's nobody else there, no faculty, no anybody else. And they just kind of go over what the questions really mean, what they're trying to ask you, if we have done them, if we're trying to fix them, if there's been some kind of action towards them, things like that.
I love that your residents do that amongst themselves. I think that's great. Now, my question to that is, does the program director or go through them with the chief resident before they get there to make sure that they also understand?
Yes, ma'am, he does. He goes over and he talks with her and kind of, if she has a question about the actual question that was asked, he goes over it with her and just kind of explains. She's been here 7 years and taken this survey so many times, she could read these questions frontwards and backwards and tell you exactly what they mean. She's fantastic.
And the interesting thing is now with the, last year there were a bunch of new questions, right? Because they kind of revamped it because they haven't. So we'll see what they look like this year too.
Yeah, I'm interested to see this year. I'm interested to see her talk after she gives it. She usually lets us see it after it's done. And so I get excited to see that when she's finished with it.
Adriana had a question about anonymous surveys in a small department. Anonymous surveys for the ACGME or like your internal surveys?
Like our internal surveys, there are only 4 to 6 of them. So it's been feedback I've gotten that they don't feel necessarily comfortable or that anything can be entirely anonymous if they would like to have feedback. And so I'm trying to think of ways to maybe exchange with other smaller programs and have it someone else look for trends that's not necessarily associated with our individual program. Or has anybody found a better way to do this?
With your surveys, are you of the residents evaluating the faculty and the rotations? Is that the specific surveys?
So our residents felt like the only way that they actually get to evaluate both the program as a whole and their curriculum as well as the attendings and the teaching was primarily during the ACGME survey, but I want to give them an independent opportunity within the department to evaluate more honestly and thoroughly as they go along.
Sure.
This is Wendy. I'm with developmental, and we have a very small program. I mean, we have 1 fellow or up to 3, but what we tend to do is we jump on with the residents and then only give them the survey like every quarter so that it's more than just the 1 or 2.
Now we batch we're medium sized, so we batch our surveys, but when we do just have 1 resident who's on like a single rotation with faculty, obviously if you turn that in at the end of each month, they would know exactly who that was. So we tend to batch them at 6-month intervals for that reason.
Yeah, because we only have 1-to-1 pairs usually.
Yeah. So if you do it 3 to 6 months, it's a little bit more anonymous. It does give you a delay, but as the program director can see them on a monthly basis, they can at least start looking for trends. But the faculty will get them back, at least twice a year for themselves. But I do like the idea of having that potential, outside person looking at them. But they won't know your program quite as well.
That's part of the idea, is to have an outside perspective.
One thing.
Anybody want to volunteer?
It would be an interesting educational research project. I could easily, depending upon the outcomes, how that would work, make it a little consortium.
One thing that some programs have done, for some smaller programs have done for the evaluation of the program, is you have the residents or fellows and the faculty fill out the exact same survey. You do lose a little bit with the questions, but then for a lot of the general questions, you can still use the same questions and get a general feel for the program and where areas of concern might be, because what that does is that increases your number of responses. Yeah, so instead of having residents say this and faculty say this, it's the individuals
that's
that took
neat.
the survey say.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's see. Anybody else have a cool tip or trick that they want to share or question? Lost. Nobody. Dana, you have a very small program. What do you do? You only got one people.
For surveys.
Yeah. How do you batch them when they go out?
We're
To
talking about like the
So-
annual program
Yeah,
survey.
Yeah.
They actually complete it. We just batch it once a year when we do our program evaluation committee.
And the fellows they feel that that's, at least for them in that environment, that's okay. There's nothing special.
We've never received any feedback otherwise. I will tell you that in regards to faculty feedback surveys, now those we do aggregate every 6 months. And some of them we've tried in the past, I know, is like to use the same questionnaire that the residents use if we're able, if it has components that are relevant. And that way, sometimes it's been mixed in with those before too. So that gives them a wider,
If they have fellows and residents who rotate with them, then their evaluations, they're filling the same form out.
yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else?
If I get it to work, I'll let you know.
All right. Well, pretty much. If no one else has anything more than that, there is not much left except for the takeaways, which are that with things we already know. The surveys are important. They're not going anywhere. They do give us important information about our programs. User review before to kind of go through things, whether I do love that idea of having the chief resident do it. If you have somebody who is that dedicated and skilled and can go through it and is willing to take it early and be the kind of the guinea pig before you send it out to the masses, sure. The goal obviously is 100% compliance for all of our programs. And ultimately, we do got this. That we have been blessed with a very compliant overall GME environment as far as getting these surveys done. And overall, as an institutional level, we do very well on our ACGME surveys. But obviously, we want all of our programs to do well and not just the average to be well. We want to be above average. So if there's anything that I can do to help, if there's anything your programs need, if you do decide that some of these techniques work for you or they don't work, reach out. I like thinking outside the box and adapting things from other places to see if we can make it work better. So I want to appreciate you for your time. And now you have 30 minutes to have lunch, unless you have other questions. And if not, we will have see you guys back. I think we're not back until February. Is that right? We don't have one in January. Is that right, Laura?
Correct.
Yep.
The first Tuesday is just very early in January.
Yep.
Hi, Dr. Ham. This is Latasha. I have a question.
Hi. How are you?
How other programs handle. It seems that our faculty sometimes misunderstand the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, how do you handle bringing the faculty up to speed? I mean, what some of these questions mean or what to look for, because they're all very busy. it's hard to pin them down, and then they forget about it. And so I was wondering, are there any tips for working with the faculty?
I mean, I do the same thing with both of them. I try to do it at a didactics, or I try to send them, if they weren't at the didactics, I send out an email that kind of highlights all the things that we just went through with all the different common concerns. But I also, similarly to how they use that chief resident, I use, one of my other core faculty members that I trust to kind of review the questions with me. So if there is something that seems kind of tricky or maybe more difficult, that I kind of highlight that in that email that I send out to everyone, just to kind of make sure that people have an understanding of what it is. But there's also always those same players that you're tracking down at the last minute. You're like, hey, you're the last one. Come on, let's get it done. So sometimes I actually have sat next to them while they have completed their survey. Anybody on from medicine or peds with huge programs that have people everywhere at multiple locations? Because I'm lucky in the sense that most of mine are all here. No. Okay. Natasha, did that help at all?
Yes, it did.
Okay. All right.
I think it's kind of funny that you've had to sit with some of your faculty. I'm sure that was entertaining.
It was. They're like, I can't get on. I'm like, let me help you get on. So, and then it took them all of 5 minutes and it was done and it was painless. And so, and I know that Theora has also sat with them as well.
Mm-hmm. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes, we'll get there. Now, most of them, if I just text them, they will get there. Be like, hey, you're the last one. Hey. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Have happy holidays. We will see you after the break.